What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and you guys loved the video that we did on the antagonist, so much so you guys crashed their website when you were trying to buy the comic. So many people showed up to try to buy it at once, it crashed the website, which I don't think I've ever been associated with a website crashing before. It's kind of bonkers. They were ecstatic about it. So, as we start to get into Deathblade, which is the comic that we're going to be covering today, there's two things to know. The first is that this is a Kickstarter comic. Only one issue has been made so far. They do have enough funding, as I understand it, for the next like 2 or 3 issues, but beyond that, if it's not funded by us, it may very well not continue on past that point. So, if you guys enjoy this, make sure you check out the Kickstarter. I'll have a link to it posted as a pinned comment. The second thing here, I have been inundated with indie comic requests by email, so much so that like my normal business email is getting filled up with stuff. So I have created a separate email for you guys to send your indie comics to if you're writing them. If you are someone who knows a person that has an indie comic, feel free to send it to that email address and I'll check it out. So what we end up doing here is we open this up. This picks up basically 27 years beforehand, before all the stuff that's happening now. And you basically have this just crazy looking guy. Now, one of the cool things about issue number 1 is that it does set up a bunch of stuff, but it is going to leave you with some questions. And I'll talk about that as we go through this. But this guy is literally being chased by a monster. And it's one of the craziest things. We don't get a whole lot here. There's no conversation, nothing like that. It's 100% action, right? This guy conjures abilities and destroys this thing midair. And then you jump to 1 year ago. So basically 26 years after this whole ordeal. Now, this is where things start to get cool, because it's almost like a Predator type setup, right? Like you have these special forces guys who are just going out into nature, they're on a mission, but these guys are some of the best out there, right? These guys are Navy SEALs. And so what ends up happening is a helicopter pilot says, I've been over this location multiple times. It's the coordinates I was given. And he asks, like, where the is it? How can something this big be missing? But that's where he sees a kind of light that's reflecting out there, and he realizes where it is. And they end up arriving at this temple out in Guatemala. And here's a crazy thing, right? What we end up getting is this guy, right? The main star of the comic, and we'll talk about him here in a second. He says, it was supposed to be easy. The orders made it seem routine, in and out, something we'd done 100 times. So anytime an action sequence opens up with that statement, you know it is not going to be in and out, and things are going to go sideways really fast. And that's where one of the guys says, possible terrorist threat located. But this guy continues on with his monologue. We handle it. Routine. We could hear the chanting, probably another religious cult believing they were doing God's work. But from that distance, we could not make it out. All we could distinguish was that the chanting was female, and in some way, it was arousing, but the voices were like being on the phone with someone, and in the background, a song is being played. It sounds familiar, but can't for the life of you remember what song it is. You can't quite make out the lyrics. It drives you nuts. And that's where he says, the truth is, we all heard it, and like an itch that cannot be scratched, it drove us nuts. Because as they're going through here, right, like one of the guys calls to another guy, right, get over here, Smith. They end up throwing down basically a grenade to blow a hole in the wall. And that's where he says, at least I think it was the same for all of them. I never got the chance to ask. I wish I had, because that's when the storm hit. Because what's so crazy is that as soon as they get in there, right, this kind of music, this voice that's playing in the background becomes stronger and stronger. But when they arrive down here, it's almost like a ritual site, to be honest with you guys, right? And one of the guys is just like, what in the hell? And that's where he says, I'm not going crazy, right? Like, we all heard that, right? We all heard that sound, that voice, the whole 9 yards. This is dope, right? I mean, you guys can already see like how immersive this is. Like, it's really good. And that's where one of the guys says, keep it down, Smith, right? And that's where Smith asks, how could they have vanished like that? I mean, unless they're ninjas or some but that's when the voice starts coming into play, right? This voice starts speaking to everybody. Do it. Give in. Such a release, such a joyous release. And then that's when panic sets in, because as tough as these guys are, now they're dealing with a force they cannot see and they cannot shoot. So how do you possibly contend with something like that when your entire career is predicated on the idea, aim at that and shoot center mass? And so that's why one of the guys says, where the is that coming from? Do you hear that, Ambrose? Now, Ambrose is the main star of the comic, right? He's kind of frozen in place here. And that's where we find out the guy who asked the question initially, his name is Rook, and he's told, we all hear that. Now just shut up. Ambrose, cover us. But again, none of them can really figure out where this is coming from. The noise continues, and the speaking becomes pretty much impossible to ignore, right? Where is it? Everyone settle down. But that's when the voice continues on. Don't resist. Do it. It will only hurt a moment. Then pleasure. Give in to the pleasure. And that's where Ambrose watches on as these guys are all driven to kill each other, to take each other out, or to take themselves out. But he's like the sole survivor of this whole thing. But that's where it gets wild, because what ends up happening is a voice turns to him and it says, now, your turn. And Ambrose isn't affected by it, right? And it just says, you will never be safe. And so what you end up doing is picking up in the present day. Now, we are going to kind of skip past this a little bit just because of the fact that in the first issue, Ambrose is basically sleeping with his wife, and like there's just full-on frontal nudity. We're gonna leave that out. We try to keep it as family-friendly as we can, contextually speaking, as Wolverine is tearing people apart, or Moon Knight is turning sprinkler water into holy water and burning vampires alive, but nudity is where I draw the line, guys. Sorry about that. But nonetheless, it doesn't really take anything away from the story. All it really does, I think, is just kind of illustrate the closeness between Ambrose and his wife, Myra. What's also important here is that she's kind of an emotional rock for him, right? Whenever he's struggling, and he is struggling with PTSD, different things like that, she's there to operate as a support in that capacity, as anyone should be doing as a romantic partner. At least you would hope so. And so that's when you start to go into the character development here. And again, this is solid, right? It's really, really good, right? Myra just says, I'm gonna be late. And Ambrose says, well, I told you last night, you should go to bed. We shouldn't stay up. But ultimately they did. And she says, Ambrose, it was certainly my pleasure, but I was not expecting it to last so long. And he's like, I tried to warn you. I'll leave my personal comments out of it because Mariah's definitely been in that boat before. But the funny thing here is he asks, what's on the agenda, right? And she's just like meeting after meeting, right? And she says, one of my clients is being accused of a crime. There's little to no evidence, but the prosecutor says they found something new, so we'll see. And that's when you start to realize that Ambrose has reservations when it comes to this kind of stuff. That of course she is a lawyer, but when you're talking about the kind of world that she's in, it's a very dangerous one. And so in some ways, she always kind of has her life on the line. And we'll talk about what that means here in a second, because it's one of the coolest developments for her character. And that's what she says, right? Don't give me that look, I'm going to be safe. I am always safe. And he says, I know. And then he puts a device so he can track and listen to everything she has going on. And so that's when you get like this funny little moment between the two of them, right? Where he asks the question, is this on the record or off the record type stuff? And she says, I plead the fifth. And he's like, sustained. And then he kind of looks at her, he's like, wait a minute, that's not right. Objected. And she's like, you're so adorable when you're clueless. And she goes to walk away, right? And he's like, wait a minute, I'm not clueless. Overturned, right? Like that's what you're supposed to say, overturned. I love the banter, right? It's small, it's not overly lengthy, but like these are the kind of things that like couples do, right? You kind of make offhanded remarks, you have little inside jokes. It's what makes a romantic relationship so fun and so enjoyable. And so after that, you kind of continue on, right? And you pick up with Myra herself, where she's told, Mr. McLaughlin is here. And of course, Myra's not too keen on that guy, but she's told, I have no problems with him, none at all. And Myra's like, I mean, of course not. Like, of course you don't. And her assistant's like, well, I mean, he's absolutely gorgeous. And so Myra's like, yeah, sure, right, just let him in. And so once he gets in there, you start to realize the two of them seemingly have a little bit of history. I don't necessarily know if there's anything romantic going on there, but they've known each other for a little while, right? And he says, Myra, how are you doing today, gorgeous? And she just says, still married, right? And he's like, still a shame. And so she asks, like, what can I do for you? And he says, I have some precious cargo that I need exported. And she asks what in the world he needs her for, right? Because she's not in the business of shipping or anything like that. But he tells her, I know that you have some connections in customs, so I was hoping for a favor. And so she asks, right, a favor, like what happened to the goons that you sent there? And he just says, a little mishap. And so she asks, right, what's this precious cargo? Or do I even want to know? And that's where McLaughlin tells her, just a few large crates that need to be handled with care. They're going to my estate back home. And so she says, right, this better not be any kind of drug trafficking or some crazy cartel. He's like, no, nothing nefarious like that, I promise. So what it seems like here is that she's engaged in some illicit stuff over time, right? Like she has helped people engage in shipping things or moving things around that she probably shouldn't as a lawyer. And while it is morally questionable and probably illegal in some cases, in this instance, it may be one of these things where the ends justify the means. Because what if engaging in a few nefarious acts that hopefully don't have anything to do with human trafficking, that she can in turn tug on a few strings and then help somebody out in a really big way that she wouldn't be able to do on her own, right? I mean, the reality of a legal system is sometimes you got to cook the books to get stuff done. It's not always fair, but that is the way that it works. And so she asked the question, where are they going, right? And McLaughlin just tells her, the crates are going to Tenchenko, which I think is how you pronounce it. I'm not overly familiar with dialects in Central America, so if I'm pronouncing that wrong, feel free to let me know in the comments, which you'll do anyway. But essentially, it's the same temple that Ambrose was at when everything went sideways. And so you switch back over to him, right? And the development on his character here is phenomenal, right? He says, I drink to try to forget. Typical alcoholic behavior, but it's the only thing that keeps me sane, and I can stop whenever I want. It's easy, right? I mean, this is an alcoholic statement, right? I mean, it's a classic statement of pure alcoholism, right? Like, you can stop whenever you want, right? You're not really addicted to alcohol in any capacity whatsoever. But what he's also showing here are clear instances of PTSD. So we know this guy's not taking care of his mental health in any meaningful way. But what's also really interesting here is there's this point where it's almost like he doesn't believe what he says, right? He's kind of like looking at himself in the mirror and he says, I can stop whenever I want, but today is not the day that I stop. So it's almost like the way he looks, or at least the way he's looking down, there's some kind of shame in there, right? The fact that he realizes where he's at, he understands he's struggling with PTSD, he knows he's an alcoholic, and there's shame in that recognition, but I would argue there's probably more shame in the fact that he cannot bring himself to stop. Now, I have never struggled with alcoholism, so I don't necessarily know what it's like for an alcoholic. I know there are people who have, and as I understand it, there is some shame in being unable to walk away or realizing where you're at and refusing to walk away from your addiction. And so that seems to be what he's wrestling with here. But that's where you start to realize the PTSD is coming into play. Because when he looks in the mirror, right, he just sees himself essentially slaughtered. And he says it's almost been a year and still no answers, no explanations, just pain and images that I cannot erase. Myra is my anchor and I love her, but I cannot continue like this without knowing. And he says, I need to figure out what happened. And so at that point, you switch back over to her secretary, at least Myra's secretary, and her secretary tells her, you got a package from RJ. And that's where Myra just says, like, that guy's one of my contacts. And where her assistant asked her, right, like, which connection is this? Myra's like, I'm not telling, right? A reporter never reveals their sources. And so her assistant tells her, like, you're not a reporter though. And she's like, it doesn't matter, right? I never reveal my sources. But here's the cool thing, because she says, do you think this is about the new case that you got? And Myra just says the prosecutor said that he had something new, but it would not have come from RJ. It would have come from the district attorney's office, right? And it would have just been labeled as such, and probably not on some secretive thumb drive. And so her assistant asks, right, was he working on something for you? And at that point, Myra just tells her no, but he drops info in on potential clients every now and then, right? So hence that kind of illicit series of activities that she's in that can actually help her out at some point along the line. But she says, right, let's see whose dirty laundry we have. And so when they go to hit play, they basically end up seeing this guy who goes by the name of M. Now, his identity is not specified here, but that is the name that he has. It's by no means a spoiler or anything like that, but this dude is a hoss, and it's absolutely amazing. I mean, this guy is cutting through these forces like Swiss cheese, and that's what they say, right? Like, holy right? Did he just teleport? What the hell? He's cutting through all of them like they're pieces of meat, right? It's no effort whatsoever. This is the incident that McLaughlin was talking about earlier when he said, well, you know, some of my guys ran into a little bit of difficulties, more or less, right? This is what he's referring to. They were taken apart piece by piece by one man. It's like that scene from Daredevil season 2, right? No, it was him. It was one man, right? It's absolutely crazy because at that point, they're like, who is that? And Myra just says, like, I have no clue. And her assistant asks, right, why was this video sent to you? And Myra says again, I don't know. And so her assistant is like, can that be real? I mean, there's no way what we're seeing is real. And so Myra just looks at the screen where M looks right back at the camera and just asks, who in the heck are you? And so at that point, you pick back up with Myra and Ambrose when they're back home, right? And Ambrose is like, I don't really feel like cooking. And Myra's like, let's order out, right? So it's like pizza, Chinese, burgers, In-N-Out, which is way better than Whataburger or Shake Shack. I don't know why anybody would believe otherwise. And that's where she's just kind of like, I mean, you know, how are you holding up? And he's like, you know, I'm doing fine, right? I mean, obviously this is nonsense, right? Okay, I know we're covering a comic book, real tangible conversation time. You young guys out there, take care of your mental health, right? I mean, I don't want to get all preachy and go off on a tirade or anything like that, but mental health is very important and you need to focus on it. What you're seeing here, right, this kind of thing where he's struggling with alcoholism, PTSD, his girl asks him, are you okay? Oh, I'm doing fine. That's that like traditional masculinity, macho nonsense. That's what leads to guys taking a short drop with a sudden stop. You need to make sure you take care of your mental health in all seriousness, right? Okay, so that's our preachy moment. Back to our regularly scheduled programming, right? But the cool thing, right, it's actually a time for celebration here because she tells him, right, there's something that I need to tell you. And he's like, I mean, did you win the lottery? She's like, no, right? And that's what she tells him, I'm pregnant, right? And he's like, are you serious? And she's like, we're gonna have a baby. And at that point, he's like, that's awesome, right? No drinking then. I guess I'll have both glasses of wine, right? But here's the important thing. It's because what you end up doing is you pick up with the aftermath of him learning this, right? Because while it is a moment of celebration in the here and now, the fact that they're gonna have kids, it's incredibly exciting, it's a great big huge deal, the reality of his situation is starting to settle in, right? He says, I am going to be a father, right? I can't believe it. I trust her. We are going to have a family together now, but I need to protect them. And that's where he takes out the device that he had planted in her purse and just starts using it to pick up on what it was that they were talking about, right? I know nothing. The crates are going to Central America. And that's when he starts asking, crates, right? Those women, that damn temple. I need to check this out, right? It makes no sense. Are they taking women from here and trafficking them there? Is McLaughlin in on it? Was he part of what happened to me, right? These are all questions that he's been wrestling with this entire time. For the first time in all this time, he seemingly feels like he's getting answers, or at the very least, there's a place for him to start. And it's one of the things to keep in mind, right? All he knew is they were sent on a mission. They show up in a temple. There were potentially some kind of hostages or terrorist activity or something like that. It's never really specified. All hell breaks loose. Supernatural elements just start running supreme. He doesn't know how to handle it. He doesn't know how to process it. No one ever fills him in on anything. There's no explanation for what was going on, and now he's just been struggling this entire time. Anyone in that situation would be right where he is, and so that's why he says, maybe this is just the divine's cruel joke, synchronicity, it's called. And he's like, there's no way that can be it, right? There has to be something bigger going on. And so as he starts making his way through this kind of warehouse, right, this old abandoned district, that he says, when I get back, me and Myra are going to have a long talk about her not so legit business partners. Now, it is important to keep in mind that while he is walking through here, this guy is a Navy SEAL. So it's not like he's really doing it willy-nilly and he's not really giving any thought. He's just kind of walking around blindly and just hoping nothing happens to him or anything like that. No. This guy's focusing on what's going on around him. Right? This guy has great situational awareness. And so that's why he asked the question, what is that? Right? And he realizes, I'm not alone. And as he's standing there, a monster appears behind him, the same kind that we saw at the very beginning of the story. And he turns around just in time to fire off a shot. But as soon as he sees this thing, it's on him and then it's gone, right? He's like, what in the hell with that? He's like, this thing is fast, right? And it just starts going at him as hard and fast as it possibly can, trying to kill him. And the whole time this is happening, all he's thinking about is his wife and child. It's the only thing he's focusing on, right? He's focusing on Myra. He's focusing on this unborn baby, wanting to make sure that he gets back to his family. And so what ends up happening, right, where he's kind of panicking, I can't, right? I cannot die. I have to survive for my family. There's a flash, and then his phone is just kind of sitting there buzzing. And then as he wakes up, he's being drug along. And it turns out he's being rescued by M. And M literally just fires up a source of energy while Ambrose just lays there. Now, here's a crazy thing, and this is one of the things that I want to specify to give you guys a kind of teaser for what to expect, because I had a conversation, right? Like we were talking about this whole comic and they were filling me in on everything they wanted to do. I'm not going to spoil anything for you guys, but I will say that what's effectively going on here, and as you've probably figured out, Ambrose has just stumbled into this much bigger world that he didn't know that he was a part of, right? It would be like if you suddenly woke up and realized that like the Avengers and the X-Men and all these groups exist, exist, except that they've all been operating out there in secret, and you never knew about them. But suddenly you do, right? Now, it's not to say we're talking about teams like them. It's simply just to say individuals with powers. That's what's going on here, right? It's a phenomenal concept, and I'm really, really excited to see where it goes. I've been told issue number 2 is incredible, right? So I'm really hyped to see what all ends up happening. But again, I will have the Kickstarter linked down in the comment section. Make sure you guys go check it out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.